Have you ever wondered why some people drain your energy the moment they enter a room? Why just thinking about them tightens your chest, makes you question yourself, and steals your peace? It's not a coincidence. It's not just a personality clash. What you're feeling is real. You've been absorbing someone else's chaos, and you were never meant to carry their poison. For too long, you've tried to make it work. You've told yourself to be the bigger person. You've given second chances, third chances, endless chances. You've explained, compromised, and even stayed silent just to keep the peace. But it didn't work, did it? You thought being kinder would fix the problem, that maybe if you were more understanding they would change. But all it did was teach them that your boundaries were optional. There comes a time when you have to wake up to this truth. Toxic people don't care about your kindness. They don't respect your patience. In fact, they count on it. They choose you not because you're weak, but because you're strong in ways they can manipulate. Your empathy becomes a weapon they use against you. Your loyalty turns into a trap. But here's the thing they never expected. You're about to stop playing their game. You're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. You're waking up. You're finally beginning to understand that your worth is not tied to how much pain you can tolerate from other people. The problem was never that you weren't enough. The problem was you kept giving your best to those who didn't deserve access to you. And the moment you decide, fully and finally, that you will no longer carry what doesn't belong to you, everything changes. This isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about honoring yourself. You have dreams, you have a voice, you have energy that was meant to build something beautiful, not constantly recover from emotional ambushes. Every minute you spend managing toxic energy is a minute stolen from the life you were meant to create. But you can reclaim it. You can take it all back with one decision, one line in the sand. And once you draw it, you'll never have to explain yourself again. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will give you the power to do what most people never dare to. You'll learn the one action, the single shift, that doesn't just protect you from toxic people but makes them vanish from your life. It's not revenge. It's not confrontation. It's something much deeper, much quieter, and far more powerful. If you've been waiting for the moment to finally break free from the people who drain your spirit, this is it. This is where the cycle ends. This is where you rise. And when you do, they won't know how to reach you anymore. They won't even try, because they'll feel it. You've changed, and they've lost their grip on you forever. You felt the weight for so long that it started to feel normal. But what you called normal was actually survival mode. You adjusted to tension. You got used to overthinking. You learned to scan every word, every glance, bracing yourself for judgment or manipulation. And the scariest part? You began to believe this was just how life is. That maybe peace was a fantasy. That maybe being emotionally drained was just part of being close to people. But deep down, something inside you kept whispering, "This isn't right." That whisper, that was your truth trying to survive. Every time you stayed quiet when your voice begged to speak. Every time you smiled to avoid conflict when your heart was screaming. Every time you made excuses for someone else's behavior, telling yourself they're just stressed, just going through something, while your own needs were ignored. Those were the moments you lost a little piece of yourself, not because you're weak, but because you cared, you hoped. You wanted to believe the best in people. But caring without boundaries becomes self-destruction. And now, you're done watching yourself disappear. You've probably told yourself that walking away would feel worse, that standing up for yourself would create even more pain, that saying no would make you the bad one. That's the illusion toxic people build around you. They make you feel responsible for their reactions. But the truth is, every time you silence your truth to protect someone else's comfort, you betray your own. That betrayal doesn't show up all at once. It leaks out as exhaustion, as anxiety, as resentment, and eventually as burnout so deep you can't even remember who you were before all the chaos began. This moment right now is your invitation to choose differently, to see what staying silent has truly cost you, not just emotionally, but spiritually. It's cost you confidence, clarity, joy. But the most painful cost of all? Time. Time you can never get back. And if that thought stings, let it. Because that pain is a compass. It's showing you where you need to go. You don't owe anyone your peace, not when they keep proving they have no intention of protecting it. You owe it to yourself to stop being the one who always absorbs the damage just to keep the peace. Imagine how different life would feel if you no longer felt obligated to explain your worth. If you woke up and didn't rehearse conversations in your head. If you didn't brace for criticism. or second guess your choices, or shrink just to be accepted. That life exists, but you have to claim it. You have to rise for it. You have to decide that your silence will no longer be your sacrifice. You've given enough. You've tolerated enough. Now it's time to take your power back. Because the people who truly love you won't make you suffer to feel seen. And the ones who do, they've already told you everything you need to know. There is a moment in every person's life where everything begins to shift. Not gradually, not gently, but suddenly, like a switch flipping inside you. It happens the second you decide, deep in your soul, that your energy is no longer up for negotiation. That moment is powerful, because it's not just a thought, it's a boundary. It's a new standard. It's the line where your past ends and your future begins. And the moment you draw it, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time, yourself, fully, unapologetically, unshakably. You don't need years of healing to make this decision. You don't need to wait until you're perfectly ready. You just need one thing, clarity. Clarity that says, I am no longer available for disrespect, not in words, but in how you carry yourself. You stop explaining. You stop begging. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who benefit from your self-doubt. That's the shift toxic people can't handle, because they were never attached to the real you. They were attached to the version of you that questioned your power, the version that overextended, overexplained, overgave. The real you, the one that speaks with quiet confidence, the one that trusts your gut, the one that says no without guilt. That version is untouchable, because that version is whole. And once you reconnect with that, the game is over for anyone who ever tried to play with your mind, your heart, or your spirit. They won't know what happened. They'll just feel the door closing. Not with anger, not with drama, but with truth, with certainty, with peace that doesn't need to be loud to be final. When you stop participating in your own suffering, everything starts to change. Not because the world gets easier, but because you've stopped handing your power to those who never deserved it. And yes, they will notice, they will feel it. They will try to pull you back into the chaos. But this time, you won't respond. Because the most powerful response is silence. It's detachment. It's refusal to dance with dysfunction. You don't rise by fighting, you rise by outgrowing. And the moment you hold your boundary without fear, you've already won. You are allowed to walk away from anything that makes you feel small. You are allowed to demand peace without explaining why. You are allowed to protect your space like your life depends on it. Because in many ways it does. Not just your physical life, but your emotional life, your creative life, your future. The world cannot afford for you to stay stuck in a cycle of proving, pleasing, and surviving. You have more to give. But first, you must reclaim what you lost, yourself. This isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. This isn't about being cruel. It's about being free. You get one life, one chance to choose who has access to you. Choose wisely, choose boldly. And once you choose, don't look back. Because you don't belong to the pain. You belong to the power that comes after. When your energy shifts, everything around you has to adjust or fall away. Toxic people are not drawn to your truth. They're drawn to your doubt. They thrive in the cracks of your uncertainty, in the space where your boundaries are still soft, still negotiable, still unsure. But the moment you anchor yourself in your worth, their grip begins to loosen, because they can no longer manipulate what they can no longer reach. This is not magic. This is alignment. And alignment doesn't argue. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain itself to people who aren't committed to understanding. You don't fight toxicity with more words. You don't heal by proving your side to someone who only hears what benefits them. You heal by standing so rooted in your own energy that their games lose oxygen, because those who manipulate do so through confusion, guilt, and chaos. But when you become clear, when your yes means yes and your no is unwavering, they lose their advantage. They can't twist calm. They can't provoke peace. And they can't exploit someone who no longer needs approval to feel whole. When you stop engaging, they start unraveling. And that's how you know your power is real. Not because you shouted, not because you fought harder, but because you became unavailable to everything that dishonors you. That's the truth they can't stand. Your peace makes them uncomfortable. Your clarity disturbs their control. And your refusal to shrink threatens everything they used to rely on. But that is not your problem. That is not your weight to carry. You are not responsible for how someone reacts to your growth. You are responsible for honoring it. You don't need to be cruel to create distance. You need to be consistent. When your values become non-negotiable, when your energy becomes focused, when your standards become fixed, those who cannot meet you will remove themselves. Not because you pushed them away, but because they can no longer survive in the presence of someone who refuses to be drained. You've spent enough time trying to keep people comfortable while you suffered in silence. You've spent enough energy managing their emotions while your own went ignored. Now it's time to reverse the flow, to reclaim what you gave away too easily, to understand that protecting your peace is not selfish, it is necessary. Your nervous system was not designed to live in a state of constant defense. Your soul was not built to navigate life in fear of confrontation or withdrawal. Let them go. Let the chaos collapse. Let silence do the work your words could never accomplish. Because when you step fully into your power, the right people will feel safe, seen, and supported by your strength. And the wrong ones? They'll slip away like shadows fading from the light. That's how you know you're rising. Not by how loud you become, but by how quiet everything else gets when you finally stand firm. That's the strength they cannot touch. That's the energy that ends the cycle. Silence is not weakness, it's mastery. It's the moment you stop responding to things beneath your evolution. You no longer need to justify your boundaries, argue your worth, or entertain what drains you. The noise that once had power over you fades when you choose not to react, because your reaction was the fuel, it was the invitation. Without it, the chaos dies out, and what remains is clarity, pure, unshakable clarity that you never needed to fix them. You only needed to free yourself. When you step out of the storm, you start to feel the weight you were carrying wasn't just theirs. It was your own permission you kept denying. Permission to rest. Permission to walk away. Permission to no longer be the emotional caretaker for people who refuse to take responsibility for themselves. You were conditioned to believe that saying no was selfish, that protecting your peace meant letting someone else down. But the truth is, every time you abandon yourself to protect someone else's comfort, you abandon the life you were meant to live. Healing isn't just about removing toxic people. It's about removing the version of you that accepted their behavior, the version that kept shrinking to keep the connection, that kept explaining just to be understood, that kept sacrificing joy to avoid being alone. You're not that version anymore. You've outgrown the need to be validated by those who devalue you. Now you're building something deeper, self-respect. And with that comes a quiet kind of power that no one can fake and no one can shake. The moment you fully accept that you are no longer available for manipulation, everything starts to realign. The invitations stop coming. The drama stops finding you. The patterns begin to dissolve. Because you've shifted from reaction to intention. You've stopped trying to survive and started choosing what you allow into your space. You're no longer proving, you're choosing, and that choice creates a ripple effect in every part of your life. Real peace doesn't come from fixing everything around you. It comes from no longer letting what's broken near you. Not because you're better, not because you're above anyone, but because you've finally remembered your value. And when you know your value, you stop entertaining anything that asks you to forget it. Let that become your standard. Let that guide your decisions. You don't need closure when you have clarity. You don't need permission when you have self-trust. This is the moment your life begins to change, not when they apologize, not when they understand, but when you decide that your energy is sacred, that your peace is not a reward for others to earn, but a responsibility you choose to protect. You owe no one your suffering. You owe everyone, especially yourself, your healing. And when that becomes your truth, toxic people won't just leave your life. They'll lose all power in it because you've remembered who you are. And that memory is your freedom. You never needed to become louder to be heard. You just needed to stop allowing your silence to be mistaken for consent. You were never meant to be a dumping ground for other people's dysfunction. You were never created to absorb criticism, control, or cruelty in the name of love, loyalty, or connection. That was a lie you were taught to believe. A lie that told you endurance was strength, that pain was part of your identity, and that being needed was the same as being valued. But now you see it. Now you feel it. And now, you're ready to break that illusion for good. There is nothing noble about abandoning yourself. There is no growth in constantly tolerating what depletes you. You don't become a better person by allowing others to treat you like less. Real strength is walking away when everything in your past tells you to stay. Real strength is choosing peace over people-pleasing. It's choosing boundaries over burnout. It's choosing healing, even when that healing makes others uncomfortable. You weren't born to carry everyone. You were born to rise. And rising sometimes means walking alone, at least for a while. The people who used to trigger you will feel smaller, not because they've changed, but because your response has. You're no longer hooked. You're no longer emotionally tangled in their chaos. You see them clearly now, and clarity is what destroys control. When you stop needing someone to see your side, you reclaim the energy that was keeping you stuck. Your healing doesn't depend on their awareness. It depends on your decision, the decision to no longer trade your peace for their presence. This is what real transformation looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, just solid, quiet decisions made deep within yourself. The kind of decisions that shift your energy so powerfully, the people who once fed off your confusion can't even find you anymore. It's not distance that keeps them away. It's your new frequency, your new standard, the way you now carry yourself like someone who refuses to bleed for love. And they feel it. Even in your silence, they feel it. The more you heal, the less you explain. The more you grow, the more you release. Not everything requires closure. Not every goodbye needs to be spoken. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is move on without a word, because your life speaks loud enough. Your alignment is louder than your arguments. Your peace is louder than their noise. You stop trying to be understood, and you start living in a way that no longer leaves room for misunderstanding. You didn't come this far to keep carrying what was never yours to hold. You didn't fight your way back just to keep circling the same pain. This is your breakthrough. This is your reset. The moment you say without hesitation, I choose myself, everything else begins to fall away. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped accepting less than you deserve. There is a quiet power in choosing yourself without needing permission. Not from your past, not from your pain, and certainly not from the people who taught you to shrink. That choice is your return to wholeness. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it is final. You begin to realize that healing doesn't always look like light and joy. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like disappointing people who were never invested in your growth, only your compliance. And when you begin choosing truth over comfort, you find the discomfort was never in letting go. It was in holding on. The version of you that tolerated being dismissed was built on survival. The version that stayed quiet to avoid conflict was just trying to stay safe. But you're no longer in survival mode. You've outgrown the need to explain your worth or earn your place in someone else's chaos. You don't need to break yourself into pieces just to make others feel whole. That's not love. That's self-abandonment dressed in guilt and fear. But now, you're awake. You see the pattern. And you're finally ready to break it. You're not hard to love. You were just surrounded by people who needed you broken to feel whole. You're not too much. You were simply in environments that couldn't hold your depth, your boundaries, or your brilliance. Difficult. You just stopped being easy to manipulate. When you choose to honor your own needs, those who benefited from your self-neglect will call it selfish. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your peace is, and peace is built on hard choices made in your favor, over and over again. Let it feel lonely, let it feel unfamiliar. Growth is supposed to stretch you. It's supposed to feel like loss, before it feels like freedom. That ache in your chest isn't a sign to turn back. It's your nervous system adjusting to safety, real safety, the kind that doesn't come from avoiding conflict but from creating alignment, the kind that comes when you stop explaining your no, when you stop softening your boundaries to keep someone else from leaving, when you stop giving people the benefit of the doubt while you carry the weight of their disrespect. There is nothing more powerful than a person who has decided they are done being controlled by fear, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood. That fear kept you small. It kept you quiet. It kept you accepting crumbs and calling it love. But not anymore. You've tasted the strength of your own voice, the stillness of your own soul, and the clarity that comes from choosing yourself without apology. Let the old fall away. Let what isn't real collapse. What remains is truth. What remains is freedom. And the more you align with that, the more the world adjusts. Not by force, but by energy. The kind of energy that doesn't chase, doesn't prove, and never begs. It simply is. And that is enough. When you no longer seek validation, you step into a power that cannot be taken. You stop looking outward for approval and start turning inward for alignment. You begin to trust your own inner compass more than the shifting opinions of others. And that shift, subtle but seismic, creates a quiet force inside you. The need to be liked dissolves. The urge to explain fades. The desire to convince becomes irrelevant. Because you've finally remembered that your worth was never up for debate. You were just taught to forget it. You start to notice how much of your life was built around pleasing people who didn't even respect your effort. How many of your choices were shaped by the fear of losing people who were never really there. How often you bent yourself out of shape trying to be enough for those who were committed to misunderstanding you. But now, you're seeing clearly. You're seeing that love doesn't require self-abandonment, that respect doesn't need to be earned through pain, that the right people will never make you feel like you're too much for being honest or too difficult for having standards. Every time you choose yourself, you send a message to your subconscious that you matter, that you are worth showing up for, that you will no longer tolerate the version of you who kept accepting less just to feel something that resembled connection. That version was a survival strategy. Necessary once, but no longer welcome. You've outgrown the need to be needed. Now you're ready to be free. And freedom looks like saying no without guilt. It looks like walking away without regret. It looks like building a life that feels like truth instead of performance. You do not owe anyone continued access to you just because they once knew a version of you who didn't know better. Growth is not a betrayal. It's a return to the part of you that always knew you were meant for more than just coping, meant for more than just surviving. You were meant for peace that doesn't come at the price of your dignity, for relationships that don't require you to shrink, for joy that isn't followed by confusion or shame. Let them misunderstand you. Let them mislabel your silence as arrogance, your distance as coldness. Let them talk, because you're not here to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You're here to become the version of yourself that no longer needs their approval to feel whole. You're here to live in a way that feels like freedom, like truth, like power wrapped in stillness. The people who truly see you will not require your suffering to connect. They will rise to meet you, not pull you back down. And those who can't, let them stay behind. Because when you finally choose yourself completely, the only things that remain in your life are the ones aligned with your truth. Everything else fades, not by force, but by no longer being needed. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. Not everyone is meant to witness your healing, your rising, your unfolding. Some people were only meant to be lessons, not lifelines. And when you stop inviting chaos to stay, you start creating space for peace to enter. This is not cruelty, this is clarity. You're not pushing people away, you're pulling yourself forward. You're no longer letting history dictate your future. You're choosing to stop repeating what hurts you and start building what heals you. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, that's growth, and that's power. Toxic people thrive in confusion. They feed off of your doubt, your guilt, your hesitation. They twist your empathy into obligation. But when you get clear on who you are and what you stand for, their power vanishes. They can't control a mind that no longer seeks their approval. They can't manipulate a heart that's no longer afraid to be alone. They can't provoke a reaction from someone who has mastered the art of self-control. Your silence becomes your shield. Your boundaries become your filter. And your presence becomes something sacred, no longer offered to those who drain it. You start to notice the shift. Where once you would have explained, now you stay quiet. Where once you would have chased, now you stand still. Where once you would have tolerated, now you walk away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in full ownership of your value. And the moment you stop betraying yourself to keep others comfortable is the moment you begin to feel peace in its purest form. It doesn't come from external approval. It comes from inner alignment, from knowing you are no longer accessible to what hurts you. Let them feel the distance. Let them feel the absence. If your presence was never truly appreciated, your absence will speak louder than anything you could ever say. You don't have to argue with someone who never truly listened. You don't have to justify boundaries that protect your peace. You don't have to explain your healing to people committed to misunderstanding it. Some things don't need closure. They need separation. And not every relationship deserves a resolution. Some just need to end, quietly, clearly, permanently. The most powerful transformation happens when you finally stop seeking healing in the same hands that broke you. When you realize that their inability to love you was never a reflection of your worth. It was a mirror of their limits. You don't have to carry their inability to meet you where you are. You only have to carry your decision to never return to where you were. You are no longer who you were. You are no longer tolerating what you once accepted. You are no longer bending to make others comfortable at your own expense. This is what freedom feels like. Not loud, not chaotic, but still, steady, unapologetic. And from this place of quiet power, you begin to rebuild everything, with peace as your foundation and truth as your guide. You don't have to explain the new you to people committed to misunderstanding the old you. Let that sink in. You are not who you used to be. You are not required to shrink back into familiar pain just to make others comfortable with your growth. There comes a time when your healing demands a new environment, a new standard, a new level of self-respect. And when that moment arrives, it isn't dramatic, it's decisive. A quiet decision within you says, no more. No more excusing bad behavior. No more normalizing emotional chaos. No more apologizing for standards born from self-worth. It's not your job to keep others comfortable while your soul aches from silence. It's not your role to tolerate behavior that drains you, just so someone else doesn't have to face themselves. Every time you betray your own voice to avoid conflict, you teach yourself that your feelings are optional, that your peace is negotiable, that your needs are a burden. But you're learning that those old lessons were wrong. You are allowed to choose yourself, even when it disappoints someone else, especially then. Because someone who is truly for you will never be against your wholeness. The more you raise your standards, the more you will outgrow people who were never meant to walk with you long term. That's not a loss. It's alignment. You're not being mean, you're being honest, and honesty is only